Well. Next conversation is around fighting illicit financial flows. Now, illicit financial flows involve money laundering, bribery by international companies, tax evasion, falsification of business transactions, and corruption, among several others. Now, while this affects individuals and economic stability of a country, some people have launched Protect What's Yours campaign groups in partnership with 9 governmental organizations, including the EFCC, the ICPC, the FIRS, and is funded by the British government. So let's discuss how the forces joined together to fight financial crimes. Among others. This morning we have Suleiman Arigbabu, who is Executive Director, Head of Resource Center, as well as Yele Okeremi. Both of them join us this morning. Thanks for joining us this morning, gentlemen. Let me begin with you, Mr. Arigbabu. This conversation is most certainly an endless one. Perhaps, okay, I think perhaps I should begin with you, Mr. Okeremi. What's missing in the information that people have about this illicit financial flows? We've been talking about this for quite a while, and I also recall, as I said at the beginning of the program, that even the president himself, was it circa 2015 or thereabout, lamented illicit financial flows and connected the dots between illicit financial flows and possession of firearms and several other things like that. Perhaps there are gaps that people are not aware of. You want to take us through that?
Thank you very much, Ayo. I don't think it's about having gaps that people are not aware of. I think we just need to appreciate that the word illicit suggests that what we have is profitable on its own, but it's not good for the common good. And so what that means is that if people are left in the wild to do whatever they please, they would naturally want to do illicit things. So the word, when we say it is illicit, it means that there is a law or a legislation that prohibits those actions. But at individual levels or at business persons levels, if there were no laws, those things would be profitable. So give examples. When we say illicit trade in certain artifacts, you would appreciate that these artifacts are pretty expensive, and so anyone that has access to them would definitely make some reasonable profits. The reason why they are said to be illicit is because government wants to protect those artifacts. And on the other hand, just like you rightly opened, every responsible sovereign wants to be in control of its security, because that's at least one of the fundamental requirements of good governance, having protection of life and property. And so they want to be able to control funds flow. They want to be able to see visibly how funds are moving from point A to point B. And so what happens in illicit trades is people do trades that may not be visible to government and, for example, anti-money laundering agencies. And these are the kind of money flows that invariably go into firearms, illegal firearms, and things like that that lead to insecurity. And that's why every state is concerned. But generally speaking, and I do agree, sometimes people are not aware of the laws that say certain things are illegal or illicit. But even when people are aware, for natural financial motivations, they will still want to do it. And therefore, one of the most important things to ensure that illicit money flows doesn't happen is enforcement. So whenever you have weak governments or weak enforcement agencies, you will continue to see a lot of illicit flows.
Let me begin. Let me ask you this, Dr. Okeremi. This might sound like a stupid question, so you'll forgive me. Is it possible for anyone to be involved in illicit financial crime and not be aware of it? I ask that question against the backdrop of inclusion or involvement of technology in the process. We'll talk about the technology end eventually, but I just want to ask you this as someone who is in the space. Is it possible to be directly or indirectly involved in illicit financial flows and not know that you are?
I think you've asked a very good question. You see, that the answer to the question is actually yes, in a way, because if the laws are not well publicized, then of course people may say we are ignorant of the law. But you and I also know, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but there's a maxim, a common saying, that ignorance is not an excuse in the law. So whether you are aware of it or not, ideally, it is the responsibility of everybody to check whether what he or she is about to go into is illicit or not. Because if you are caught, you cannot give the excuse that it's because I didn't know. So actually, I do agree that it's possible. I mean, people are ignorant about so many things. I really do agree with that. But it turns out that whether you are aware of it or not, if you do anything illicit and then the law catches up with you, you have to pay for it.
Ms. Harigbabu, thank you again for joining us this morning. Well, you've heard Dr. Keremi's opening about what it means, illicit financial crime or illicit financial flow, what it means. What's your own perspective to it?
All right. Thank you and good morning to our viewers. I would like to narrow the definition of illicit to financial flows because, I mean, there are so many illicit. There is even illicit jail, if you say. In terms of illicit financial flow, which is the focus for Nigeria now and indeed for Africa, we need to look at some numbers. So, for instance, there's an high-level panel of Africa headed by former President of South Africa, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, said that between 2000 and 2010, Africa lost about $60 billion, and that Nigeria has about $40 billion in that. And then there's also the Chatham House report that gave a span of a period where Africa is said to have lost over $865 billion. So if you look at the kind of numbers we are talking about, let's do comparison because according to the Premium Times report we were mentioning, Nigeria is said to lose about $18 billion annually to illicit financial flow. So what exactly is illicit financial flow? Illicit financial flows are money that are meant for Nigeria, to put Nigeria in focus, either money that companies are supposed to pay in taxes, monies that they are supposed to pay in royalty, money that belong to the country. There are people illicitly using a very sophisticated network of enablers, both international banking institutions and, of course, local officials. So you find a lot of these being perpetrated by multinational companies. You find a lot of it being perpetrated by big Nigerian companies. You find most of it, of course, being perpetrated by Nigerian government officials. So $18 billion annually, if you understand, the continent of Africa requires every year between $7 to $15 billion to deal with climate change. Now, one country, Nigeria, loses $18 billion annually to illicit financial. And then when we say illicit financial flow, we are not talking about the entirety of corruption that is happening in Nigeria, for instance. We're just talking about those that find their way out of our shores into different international financial institutions. And it's interesting that the UK government is supporting the those who have put up this very good report in Premium Times. But unfortunately, the UK is one of the epicenters where illicit financial flow from Africa finds refuge. And they have stubbornly, if you look, let me give you, for instance, the case that we are all aware of, the Ibori case, where it was alleged they have confiscated about 120 million pounds from Mr. James Ibori, former governor of Delta State. And after all these years, they wanted to release just 4.5 million pounds of that money. Imagine the percentage that they want to, out of their generosity, release. So imagine what the remaining 120 million would have done in our economy or to the lives of people of Delta State. Imagine how much it has contributed to the economy and to the interests, of certain individuals in Britain and the entire British economy. These are the kind of things we are saying. We are saying that people take away our progress, our education, our jobs, our healthcare, and stash them abroad, and instead bring back insecurity, poverty, joblessness, and hopelessness into this country. So it's a very serious matter for Nigeria. Unfortunately, it does not appear that just 2 weeks ago, Nigeria lost a bid to retrieve about $1.7 billion from JP Morgan in a matter in the UK because the Nigerian government googled its own case and did not diligently prosecute that matter. Not only would we lose that, there are some other monies that have been waiting for Nigeria just to pick up from the same OPL 245 case, for instance, the Malabu matter. $120 million somewhere in the Scandinavia waiting for Nigeria to pick up out of what had been retrieved for people involved in that scam. But that money will go back because Nigeria did not prosecute diligently the matter in the UK, and the matter in Italy and in other places. So when we are talking about illicit financial flows, it is one of the reasons why this country is sitting on insecurity, on extreme poverty, 80 million or thereabout children out of school. If you want to also understand for comparison, my organization, Header Resource Center, earlier in the year released our 5th edition of the annual compendium of hundreds.
Yeah, we'll come to that report. I've seen it, and this is quite daunting. And I mean, according to the report, you have something in the region of more than $35 billion, it will seem, that we need to consider. But we'll come to that report, and it's actually very, very damning. But let me come back to you, Dr. Okeremi. One of the things that disturbs me about this conversation is, that collaboration with those agencies of government, the EFCC, the ICPC, the FIRS, and the rest of them. I'm wondering what your opinion is on how that collaboration would work. Here is why I'm asking the question. The president has spoken about this, and I think I've only heard him speak about it once. But the way insecurity has gone, it will seem like the president has spoken about that quite more frequently. In terms of policies, laws, regulations guiding the way we do things, do you see a strong resolve indeed, an institutional resolve to terminate illicit financial flows? Secondly, do you see it happening?
Thank you. And I think you've asked very fundamental questions. So first of all, whether there is a resolve. Yes, I think if you take a look at the current government of the day, they came to power on only one point. They had, as far as I'm concerned, all the manifestos of this government was anti-corruption. That was all they had to tell Nigerians when they were coming in. And so that shows at least some intent to curb some of these issues. Because if we take a look at what Mr. Adubabu went to take a look at in terms of illicit financial flows, I think the first and most important thing is let's leave the flow out of it initially. Let us address the root causes of the illicit flows, and that's exactly what you are talking about. Well, you see, there's a very interesting maxim that if wishes were horses, beggars would ride. So good intentions, even if you catch an armed robber, it will give you good reasons why, he did it. If you speak to the Accountant General that allegedly, made away with 80 billion, he will give you good reasons why he doesn't want his family to be 20th generation to, not to suffer. And that tells us one thing, that good intentions is cheap. Anybody can have good intentions. But if you are going to be successful, and that addresses the second question you have asked, if you are going to be successful about anything, including leading a family, we have to be aware that good intention must be added to a good game plan. And when we talk about a good game plan, we are talking about your strategy, your tactics of addressing it. It's not just enough to say, oh yes, we are going to tackle corruption. Anybody can say that. But what is the game plan? And the game plan are some of the things you are talking about. Ensuring that we have appropriate understanding at judiciary, ensuring that we have appropriate enlightenment of the society. Those are practical things. Then after you having a good game plan, you need competence. It doesn't matter whether your game plan is good. The devil of most things that everybody, human endeavor, does, the devil is in the execution.
Talking about execution, my apologies. Talking about execution,
yes,
let's go to one of your areas of specialty, which is technology. How significant is the use of technology in the leakages that make this happen? I know that we have a cybercrime law. That's actually one of the reasons I asked, if we have a strong enough institutional instrument, that can help to deal with this issue. So in terms of the use of technology in the flows, in the leakages, how wide is the lacuna that need to be blocked? And talking about competence or character or competence that you talked about the other time, or capacity that you talked about this time, do you think we have the capacity and the competence to use technology to deal with this challenge?
Look, Ayo, let me be clear about this. Point blank, there's absolutely no aspect of technology, including biotechnology, that Nigeria doesn't have. We have Nigerians all over the world that are excelling in this area. But you see, whether Nigerians have the competence or not is not an issue. But one of the things I've always said is a mediocre secondary school, their football team will probably defeat the national team of France. If the national French team decides that their number 9, their main striker, they put him at the goal, and then they put the person who is supposed to be central defender at the right wing, it tells us that formation is about everything. It's not just about having the brightest minds, it's about putting them in the right places. So whether Nigerians have the skill or not, I have absolutely no doubt about it. The issues are the people who are occupying those offices. How equipped are they? And that's where the real issues are. And just like you said, so whether we have people that can do it or not, there's absolutely that we have abundance of them, both locally and in the diaspora. But the issues that we face is whether we are putting the right people in the right places. And that speaks to the components I was talking about, having a good game plan. And the last component I didn't talk about was discipline. Whether we are disciplined enough to continue to prosecute what we have to do, even when it appears as if we are not yet getting results. Those are the issues. So I think, yes, we have people that can do it, but the people that are there, a good number of them, two problems, are not properly equipped technically. And then you'll be very surprised that sometimes I say some of these things that, oh, maybe people there don't know. But you'll be surprised that a good number of people there actually know a lot more than you think that they know. But they also have their own interests. And that also speaks to this illicit financial flows that we're talking about. Because when people have interests, then they begin to bend the rules, they begin to frustrate the process of doing the right things. Those are the challenges that we face. But much more importantly, I can say with a lot of boldness that we still have not created a well-grounded institutional framework to curb some of these illicit financial flows. But whether we have people that have the skill or not, I have no doubt that we have them. abundant.
Well, Mr. Rigbabu, let's go to that data that you're talking about. You released a document, a compendium of 100 high-profile corruption cases in Nigeria. That's quite daunting. And I see that in that document, the total amount recorded according to the data analysis in the document that you produced comes to some 17 trillion naira. That's about 35.4 billion dollars. In that document, I see that it is said, according to the report that you released, that the female recorded against the females is about $20 billion plus, and $15 billion recorded against the names of the men. Can you take us through this, data and how you arrived at these figures?
Okay, thank you. So first about that report, to understand that report does not contain that of the Accountant General's aides. Those are new. Every year we update, we step down some cases reported either because they have been concluded or because they have been thrown into irrelevance at the 100. So we are just picking 100 of some of we believe to be the most relevant. And in this latest 100, 17 trillion, which is more than Nigeria's budget for this year, is what Nigeria is trying to retrieve from Nigerians, politically exposed. And you can understand that 100 is just a drop in the ocean. We are not talking about what's happening at local government, what's happening mostly at state level, and what's happening in so many federal parastatals that are yet to be investigated or that are yet to be charged. We only report cases that have been charged to court. So you can see that there is a huge gap. Now, secondly, in terms of the gender performance there, yes, it's interesting that women unfortunately showed up on these terrible statistics. But let me throw something in their defense, is to say that when you then do a disaggregation, the number of women involved in some of these cases are quite few compared to men. It's just that there are some, to have a better word, women whose level of corruption, beats anybody's imagination. And that's why, and in 2021, we wrote a letter to Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari, that there are about 900 billion tied down in anti-corruption cases that are being prosecuted, that the government is not prosecuting diligently and that they needed to work on. Matter of fact, we also trace, because we have been trained for some years, we have been training Nigerian journalists, activists, and interested citizens on how to trace illicit assets owned by Nigerians, either in Nigeria or especially abroad. We found out that just about 10 governors have properties, the ones that we have found out anyway, in the UK alone, worth £56 million. These are the kind of money that people take out of this country to enrich other economies. So you then wonder why Nigeria will not be having the kind of insecurity we have. Now, Dr. Okenide, please pardon me if I missed the name. I was saying earlier that perhaps what is most missing for us is the will. And I have to agree with him that unfortunately this government rode into power on the cry of we are going to deal with corruption. But goodwill, yes, that was what he said, that goodwill alone is not enough. We have seen a lot of goodwill without, now we can't even say it's goodwill anymore, because you see a president always talking about how corruption is killing Nigeria. Unfortunately, the same president appoints people into his cabinet who will protect corruption and the people of corruption.
Well, Mr. Rigbabu, there's a lot to unpack in that document, so if you can just speak to him. I also noticed that in that same document, some of the data that you released, the analysis shows that the frequency of counts and percentage of major defendants in the charges shows that the former ministers and advisors accounted for 13%, senators accounted for 2%, former governors accounted for 15%, and then there is others accounting for 70%. What are the components of these others?
Okay, thank you. So you will understand that those who enable corruption are not necessarily those who go to the ballot to be elected. So, for instance, you have, like I said, we have not included the case of this attorney general. I mean, the case of accountant, auditor general, for instance. So when these are the components of others, people who have parastatals, people who are coming from state level, who had programs, who had projects, former ministers, the enablers of corruption. So when you look at the gamut, and like I did say, why sometimes these statistics change from year to year is that we only focus on cases that are in court, of course, to avoid being guilty of defaming anybody. We only report on cases that are in court, and we update the status of those cases. So all the others that we are talking about, these are people in federal government parastatals, some are charged with managing certain responsibilities. We have NNPC, we have so many corporations of government where the actual corruption takes place. So the poster boy or girl of the corruption sometimes is maybe a minister or a governor. Really, even in the military, a lot of money that is meant to defend, to help our troops on the various fronts in the northeast, in the northwest, and across the country, finds their way into private hands, private pockets. So these are some of those who make up these orders that we are talking about. Okay. And like I did say, the will.
Yeah. Well, just to my apologies for butting in. Before I go to Dr. Kerem, I just want to ask you, this report you said is the fifth in the series. It accounts for from what year to what year?
Okay, so this report was reporting just 2021 up to November 2021. That's December 2020 to November 2021. And that's the cycle for the report.
2020 to 2021.
December 2020 to November 2021.
Okay, so
that's your normal cycle. Okay. Why this one came out in May was that there were some errors that we discovered. Okay. And we had to do a reprint. Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Keremi, how significant do you see this kind of work that's been done by Header Resource Center in the fight against illicit financial crimes?
I want to say kudos, good work, because you see, one of the things we understand about management is when management wants to solve problems, one of the things we say is it frequently discussed? If an issue is not frequently discussed, it means it's not getting sufficient visibility of leadership or management. So how do we get these conversations going? This is part of what they have done, and good, very good indeed, that they've brought this, and we hope that the conversations will continue, because when conversations keep going on around something, it is expected, other things being equal, that there will be resolutions. I mean, the way the Yoruba people say it, very intelligent people, they will tell you that a person that continues to repeat what is going on, if you put yam on the fire, the yam will never get burnt, because it's always saying, oh, my yam is on the fire. So many people are going to be involved directly or indirectly in ensuring that the yam gets cooked without getting burnt. So I think it's a good step in line. However, I want to say something that I think is important that we should note. That yes, these are the things that we see. But let me explain that there's a whole lot that actually, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a whole lot beneath the iceberg that we are not seeing. Look, what we see are the ones that can be traced. Bank accounts. And that's the question you asked about whether, technology, if the money is flowing from one bank account to another bank account, absolutely, we can trace it. We can see how the money moved from bank A to bank B and so on and so forth. Those are easy to catch. How about the ones that actually just go and dip their hands in cash? And then they go and build small huts in their villages. And they keep the cash in dollars. How are we going to trace those kind of things? And I think these are big issues. And that's one of the reasons why many governments all over the world talk about anti-money laundering, and they want to know every transaction above a particular threshold in cash. They expect that it should be reported.
But if that has been reported, if that policy of government has been as effective as it ought to be, I think that policy dates back to the Sanusi era when he was CBN governor. If
Correct.
That is correct, and that's been on for so many years, I think we've had like maybe one or two other CBN governors after that. How come we are still where we are? Is that to say that the system is not supporting that policy, or what exactly do you think is going on?
Very big problems. The problem is when you have a football match and the referee is part of another team, which team do you expect to win? So what we are getting is a situation where the people who are regulators in themselves are culpable of a lot of the crimes that we are talking about. So there's a way the Yoruba says that you are reporting a wicked person to a wicked person. You are not going to get justice. So, you see, it doesn't matter what form of government or what formation that you have. Bad people will continue to instill pain on Nigerians. So we need to take a very good look at the top of leadership.
Okay.
I'm not addressing any specific person, but this is just the fact.
Yeah. You spoke to the fact that sometimes, well, it's easy to trace money transfers because there is the use of technology. But then isn't that the part of the reason, and there are those who would also point to cryptocurrency and government's move against that one. Do you see that also helping, government being averse to crypto transactions in the country? Do you see it as something veritable enough to deal with the issues, or is just maybe a slap on the wrist or pretense?
No, it's not. And they are related, but also there's a way we can separate them. You see, issues of cryptocurrency, I have come to one realization. If you take a look at the countries where these things are preponderant, you notice that these countries are countries that actually have very weak leadership, very weak institutions, very weak government. And that's why, if you look at, the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrencies that are really are being talked about, and people try to use those as store of values, people are trying to move away from their foreign or sovereign currencies into such securities because they do not have confidence in their sovereign currencies. And you can understand why. Today you hold a naira, and by tomorrow or the day after, what you could buy without 1 naira, you would need 5. And so what people are looking for is where can they store value. And so the Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency did at a point present some solace to a lot of people that they wanted to keep their monies in that particular area. But then no responsible sovereign would allow itself not to be able to monitor financial flows. And that explains why many governments, including that of Nigeria, also said they did all sorts of things to discourage the use of crypto. But then the central bank also comes up with a central bank digital currency. For all intents and purposes, it's the same technology. The central bank digital currency is a cryptocurrency, except that it is controlled by the sovereign. And we do know who the issuer and the ultimate obligor is.
Okay.
But the fact that we have that platform does not mean that the monies are invisible. On the blockchain, which is the technology that controls cryptocurrencies and central bank digital currencies, the transactions are actually transparent, and they are even transparent to all. So government is able to monitor what happens on such platforms.
Well, we can only hope and pray that somehow, this will not just be talk, but really actionable activity on the part of government and every one of us involved, as you have said earlier, Dr. Okeremi. But for now, we have to thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of our conversation. Dr. Yele Okeremi is CEO of Precise Financial Systems. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, as well as Sulaiman Arigbabu, who is Executive Secretary, Header Resource Center. Gentlemen, we appreciate your time this morning.
All pleasure.
All right. Well, Sunrise continues right after now with another conversation. This time it's got to do with leadership. Do stay with us.